And let us do the news. And we start in Serbia. This is from Zero Hedge. Largest anti-government protest in Serbia's history has taken over the capital city of Belgrade. What's been widely reported as Serbia's largest ever protest have gripped various districts of Belgrade over the weekend, which saw well over 100,000 people descending on the capital Saturday. The BBC observing while the government put in attendance at 107,000 across Belgrade, an independent monitor said 325,000, if not more, had gathered, making it Serbia's largest protest ever. Here's one of the photos of what's going on. Let's see if we can zoom on that just a bit. This is 200% zoom. Yeah. Big crowd for rather dreary rainy day there in Belgrade. That photo courtesy of the Associated Press. The people filling the streets calling for an end to the more than decade-long governance of the Serbian Progressive Party of President Alexander Vučić, following a deadly tragedy last November which many believe was aided by corruption and corner-cutting. 15 bystanders were killed when a concrete canopy of the main railway station in Novi Sad collapsed on top of bystanders who had been walking underneath at the time. Protesters are blaming the Progressive Party of Vučić and already the resignations of several senior officials have resulted, as well as at times explosive shouting matches, even violent scuffles amongst lawmakers in Parliament. Saturday's protest was called 15th for 15 protest, given that it took place on March 15th. It looked to be largely peaceful, given only 22 people were arrested, while 56 others were injured, and that's according to Serbian national media. Here's a video from this protest at night. This is just crazy. Look at all of these people. I believe this is aerial footage shot by drone. I saw people gathering in the streets. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. Young people and students are a large component of the demonstrations, which has also been joined by lawyers, teachers, even farmers. One law student interviewed by the BBC has commented, quote, "We just want a country that works. We want institutions that do their jobs properly. We don't care what party is in power, but we need a country that works, not one where you don't get justice for more than 4 months." Honestly, I think that echoes the sentiments of populists all over the world, and what we've seen with the recent political upheavals in the United States and elsewhere. People just want countries where everything works. Institutions that do their jobs properly and obey the will of the people. And the people don't really care what party is in power as long as they get results. And they are given a country that works. So much of the Western world has just been focused on the sort of managed decline and entrenched bureaucracy that refuses to give the people what they want and what they demand, having this sort of arrogant Sir Humphrey Appleby attitude of, you don't just give people what they want, thinking it on the equivalent of giving brandy to an alcoholic. But for a nation of only 6.6 million people, the sheer size of the crowds in the streets have been quite impressive. Let's mute this. Trying to avoid a copyright strike if at all possible. Daytime aerial footage of the protests. No flags of foreign countries in these crowds, I'm noticing. Just Syrian flags. But there is an international dynamic at play as well. Vučić is often described in Western media as friendly to Putin. Serbia remains another one of these east-west fault line countries in which Europe and NATO would like to see a government which moves away from generally warm relations with Russia's Putin. Some analysts have warned the country is ripe for a West-backed colour revolution, but by and large the population is still anti-NATO, given their memories of the brutal bombing campaign of 1999 led by US warplanes under President Bill Clinton. So, with all of that context established, I don't know. This looks big. This looks really big, like too big to be some sort of psyop campaign by Western intelligence. This sort of thing costs money to get going as well. And as we know, organs like USAID, well, they've had their funding cut, so the money supply is dried up. Hard to tell if this has got Western backing here. I know they're not going to... The West is not going to shed any tears if Vucic goes away. But yes, just zooming into ground level view, I can understand those sentiments. We just want a country that works. I think we all want that. We want to live in nations where things just work. Now, it seems like so long ago, we used to live in countries where things just worked. People did their jobs. People did what was expected of them. And what was expected of them was made quite clear. Nowadays, the lines are blurred. And what we have here, in a lot of Western countries, is just a sense of managed decline. Of people are not going to do what's expected of them. People are not going to pull their weight and do their part to make a society function. And we're all just expected to accept that. We're all just supposed to accept mediocrity. We're all just supposed to accept the decline and just let that be it. Just embrace the suck. The so-called new normal. Well, I don't accept any of that. I think that we can have higher aspirations. I think that we can reach and strive for higher things and for better. I believe in a certain spirit of excellence with things. And that we are right. Not only is it our right to strive for that, it's our duty. Could be boosted and amplified by the West, though. Latch on to an event, push a bit, see if it takes off. That is possible. Welcome in, Zangramash. That is quite possible. We could be seeing a legitimate movement here. And it is possible that Western forces are trying to hijack it. Because they don't like the fact that the Serbian president has cozied up to Vladimir Putin. As though somehow that's some sort of crime. Freedom of association is a universal human right, after all. And whatever one thinks of the Russian president, I don't think it's necessarily a crime to associate with him. Especially if that helps to advance the interest of one's nation. If there are some sort of shared objectives here, that is not a crime. But of course, Western intelligence agencies, just to name a few, a lot of powers in the West, a lot of people would love to see Putin be isolated and eventually thrown out of power. But that's only because they view Russia as just another geographic area on the map with resources to plunder. Anyways, there's a video out. It's actually from Leaflet. The Art of a Good Protest. How Corruption Killed People in Serbia. Let's have a look-see here.
Happening. So, people told me that like some Serbian protests are going on right now. They're pretty crazy. I'm gonna be real though. I don't know anything about Serbia. Serbia is. I only know this because of Food Guesser, because I play a lot of Food Guesser, which has helped me with
Serbia on a map.
geography. But anyway, apparently there's like some big protests going on here. I don't really know much about it. But it's kind of becoming big, I think, like right here. Like these are from today. And there's like apparently like some huge protests going on. Dude, that's an insane amount of people.
Really is. That's why I say this would be hard to fake. This would be hard to be a gay op by Western intelligence.
Huge crowds on the streets of Belgrade, Serbia tonight demanding the resignation of the president. So something happened with the president?
Apparently so.
Despite the scale of the protest, they received little coverage in the Western media.
That could also be telling. If something gets very little coverage in Western media, it's not because it's uninteresting. In fact, there's a lot of things that Western media does not cover that is actually of paramount importance that people need to know. For instance, what happened, I believe it was in the Middle East or Africa, a church full of worshippers, stormed by jihadi terrorists, Muslim extremists just bursting in and beheading the lot of them. No coverage in the Western media, because they don't care, because the victims happen to be Christian. And Western media does have a decidedly anti-Christian bias. Not to mention an anti-white bias as well. So that could be something to do here. These people are seen as whitest of white, and, you know, that sort of thing just doesn't fit into the narrative. One of those white European countries, who cares about them? But it could also be that, well, wait a minute, this is an organic social protest that has cropped up. This is not anything that has been authorized or started by any of our Western intelligence agencies, which, make no mistake, chat, Western intelligence agencies are deeply embedded within news agencies. Largest newspapers in the world: New York Times, Washington Post, the Los Angeles Times, Chicago Tribune, the Telegraph, the Mail, Japan Times. All of these have intelligence agents in their newsrooms, sometimes working right alongside the reporters themselves, the journalists themselves. Same with the newswires, especially the newswires, the Associated Press, Reuters, AFP. They're right there in the thick of things to make sure that they can steer coverage in ways that Western intelligence agencies approve of. There's no way they don't know about this sort of thing, and yet they're keeping a lid on it, because it's not something that they may necessarily be in control of. It's sad that in this modern day and age we all have to be sort of criminologists when it comes to Western media coverage, learning to read between the lines, learn to decipher all of these code words and buzzwords. But yes, when something gets very little coverage in Western media, that means it doesn't fit a narrative that they're trying to push. And so if it doesn't fit the narrative, it's not fit to print, at least in their eyes. And chat, I notice you're overlapping with Leaflet's chat, so we're going to move you over here, thereabouts. So you're going to be brushing up against dear lovely Leaflet's hair a bit. Though I'm sure her hair smells lovely and probably smells of blueberries and this odd effervescent slime, which probably has this air of misty spring water from mountaintop ranges or something like that. So enjoy that. I mean, what? Anyway.
I'll be 100% honest here. Most people don't care. Like, most people don't care about Serbia. I'm just being real. Until they can virtue
That's
signal
probably
about it,
true.
don't care.
Yeah, that's also a fair point. But I mean, what has driven that? People probably would care if it were published in mainstream sources, because they're told, hey, this is big news. This could have an effect on the world, or at least this part of the world. And in the interest of serving the public, you should probably know about this. You know, that's what journalism was originally supposed to be about, keeping you informed of what is happening in the world. And, you know, some people may have family over there. Some people may be originally from Serbia. Some people may have friends over there. But no matter what, it's good to sort of keep yourself abreast of what's going on in the world. Now that I'm thinking of it, I believe V actually mentioned the collapse that led to this protest in a video when he was talking about corruption in Romania and surrounding countries. Yes, that sort of corruption has been long-standing in a lot of Eastern European countries, and to an extent Russia. A lot of it stems back to the days when many of these countries were still part of the Soviet Union, and that sort of thing was de rigueur. It was to be expected, really. But it's still nonetheless unacceptable. Over a dozen people should not lose their lives walking through a subway tunnel because it collapses, because the people who built it couldn't be bothered to do the job properly. That's the whole point. Someone cut corners and it costs people their lives. And it's finally one of those things where it was the straw that broke the camel's back. And in prosperous, high-trust societies, this sort of thing does not happen. And the Serbian people are correct to want that for themselves. We're going to have to mute that.
I don't know if this. I don't think this is some fucking conspiracy or anything. I just think that most people wouldn't care about it, so that's why they don't cover it. It's not a big deal. I'm just saying that people don't care about it because it's so far away, and until there's like some actual virtue signaling to be had, people won't care about it.
Perhaps so, but they still need to know about it. And the media is wrong to just not talk about it. It's a story that deserves to be told. Ultimately, it's up to the people what they do with it.
That is a lot of people, though.
It is.
All right, let's watch this video first, and then we'll take a look at some more of this footage. This one's by Living Ironically in Europe.
The demon
Is an
irony.
anime profile pic check. All right. How corruption kills Serbian protests. All right, let's see.
In 1883, Novi Sad, one of Austria-Hungary's largest cities and the biggest Serbian-inhabited city at the time,
Yeah, again, I don't know much about what's going on there, so
its first train station.
I'm just being honest. I don't know. I know even less about this than I know about Ukraine.
The building was nothing out of the ordinary and similar to many others in the empire, and mainly connected the city with other parts of Hungary. For decades it functioned normally, serving the local population to get around. After Austria-Hungary was disintegrated and Novi Sad was annexed by Yugoslavia, the city started growing in importance, with many new Serbian and Bosnian settlers flooding to Novi Sad. In a relatively short amount of time, the city grew to a size that was beyond the capacity for its infrastructure.
It's what we've seen with everything from highway systems to train systems. You put a station somewhere, and it's not a guarantee, but strong chance that things are going to sprout up around it. I mean, just think of so many American towns that did not exist or were just provincial farming spots before the US and interstate highway systems were built. Think of all of the towns in Britain that were just little tiny hamlets that nobody even knew existed before things like the M1 was built. Or, any of the other major, the A25, just insert whatever dual carriageway you can think of. Just insert that there. And the growth that has come from the building of that infrastructure. And before the age of the automobile, and the dual carriageways and the interstate highway systems, there was the railroads, the railways. So many towns started out as simple stops. And from there, civilization grew. It's quite incredible when you think of it.
As such, the communist government at the time embarked on a journey to renovate and expand the city to fit the needs of its citizens. One of the main infrastructure projects conducted by them was the demolishing of the old train station and the building of a new, more centrally located one. Hence, in 1964, the Novi Sad train station as we know today was built. The station was built in a classical brutalist style and service connections.
Of course it was brutalist. Typical communist modus operandi. Make it big and imposing and depressing looking and make it suck. They had a beautiful train station that could have expanded on with that. Built it to an even more grander and elegant scale. But no. Let's just make it big and blocky and boring. Make it suck. Make it look depressing. Just so the bloody plebiscites don't forget who's in charge around here. Bastards.
And quickly became a popular gathering place for locals. For years, the train station remained untouched
and it's the only
and
option
stood
in
the test
town.
of time, proving to be reliable and quite efficient in servicing tens of thousands of passengers. Most notably of all, it became one of the defining buildings of the city and beloved by many. However, sometime in 2022, the mayor of Novi Sad, Miloš Vučević, announced that after 60 years...
He looks like a Bond villain. I don't like him.
station was going to be fully renovated as a part of the fast rail project between Belgrade and Budapest, funded and
Wait a minute.
in great
Let's
part
go
of
back and
so
look at
that
this.
After 60 years, the train station was going to be fully renovated as a part of the fast rail project.
It just looks white and sterile. This is hideous. What the hell were they thinking? I hate it. I hate it so much.
Project between Belgrade and Budapest, funded and executed in great part by the Chinese government.
Brutalism strikes
The
again.
renovation
Oh,
project
and
would be undertaken by
Chinese have a hand in
Chinese
this too.
construction
Lovely.
company starting and would be executed via joint efforts of Serbia.
Yeah, this video is actually old. Yes, this is from 3 weeks ago. Whereas all this stuff happening right now is from right now.
I mean, it's still,
So yeah, just as
it's still fresh.
just as you said, Revedesinov. That is a good point.
This was seen as nothing special, as for several decades now, China has been a key partner in developing Serbia's infrastructure and overall the infrastructure in the Balkans with countries like Hungary, Greece, and North Macedonia.
You know, look, China, if you've got this much money to throw at a public works project, can't you at least make it look elegant? Can we please just make something that looks elegant? Does it really have to be this brutalist bullshit? I mean, sorry, I forgot. I'd be beating my head against the wall trying to explain this sort of thing to communists. Especially communists that want to fight unrestricted warfare to try and undermine the West like that.
Openly working with the country in the strive to develop their nations. However,
Oh, hey, Belt and Road Initiative. They probably required Chinese workers famous for tofu dreg construction. Build it. They do the same in Africa. Yes, they do. They'll bring in Chinese labor. They won't hire any local labor. They'll act like a bunch of bloody loan sharks to African and European nations, and then they'll just seize it all. When inevitably, the local governments can't cough up the payments. It's predatory behavior. And honestly, I'd love to see a day when other countries just sort of stiff the Chinese. It was just like, yeah, we're not paying. And yeah, we're gonna keep everything you built here for us. So fuck off and get out. Just totally stiff them, stab them in the back. I should love to see what they try to do then. I imagine they probably won't do much. Because if anything, they're probably not used to people standing up for themselves. Though I don't know, I imagine they might fight them tooth and nail. I don't know, it'd be interesting to see. It'd be interesting to see more governments just stand up to China and say, yeah, you know what, we're not going to pay you back. This money, it's ours now. This stuff you built, it's ours now. So fuck off. We'd love to see that. It'd probably go to the international courts. China's the most international bodies captured. International courts have frequently proven to have very little or no standing, and any sort of judgments that come down from an international court, it's like, yeah, good luck trying to enforce that. You have to have a country that's willing to respect rulings from international courts, and most countries, they're not willing to do that. I bet the maintenance of the crap construction would be horrible for the country. They'd likely have to rebuild it from the ground up. Yeah, that's another thing to keep in mind. The stuff the Chinese build, it's not built to last. I mean, I don't know if any of you have ever seen Serpent ZA and Laowai86's videos when they were journeying across China. Well, they would go to some of these real estate developments and even some of these ghost cities that the Chinese built. And they would they would see that stuff was just crumbling, falling apart.
Because the train station in Novi Sad carried such tremendous cultural and historic weight, the importance of the project was tremendous, and any and all botching of the project would reflect horribly on the ones responsible. As such, in 2023, in the effort to boost his PR and political standing, Serbia's president, Aleksandar Vučić, announced that he would come and visit the construction project, an event which would be broadcasted across national television. In an effort to make the project's progress look good, the construction started to be rushed, with many corners being cut. In one of the reports published by Zoran Djajic, an engineer working on the project, Zoran stated that he submitted a photo to the authorities where behind one of the panels there was pieces of...
My favorite flavor.
I know, right, Shago? Like, just using like low quality materials.
Tofu drag construction.
A photo to the authorities
just like we mentioned
behind
earlier.
One of the panels there was pieces of concrete. The concrete was partially missing and was substituted with cement jackets crushed in order to fit smaller pieces of concrete inside the construction.
I don't know much about construction, but it does look pretty bad.
In another incident, Djajic also apparently asked for the marble slabs in front of the building to be checked for the substrate under them and to repair the substrate and put up new marble slabs. Instead of doing that, allegedly, the project artist just repainted the panels even though they needed to be fully replaced. Most notably, in the same year of his visit, before the project was finished, the news agency...
Wow, just wow. Reminds me of the Simpsons meme where Homer struck his fat behind his neck. Lots of Chinese people there, yeah. As we expected, Chinese laborers being imported and doing an absolute shit job.
021.rs asked the Ministry of Traffic to get documents about the reconstruction. However, the ministry denied their request, claiming that the Chinese project contractors do not wish for the documents to be available to the public before the end of the project.
Because it could prove absolutely embarrassing to all of them.
Besides that, one of the newest additions to the train station was the renovated canopy, which was envisioned to be reconstructed by having heavy glass, concrete, hard metal frames, and a green surface above it added. Many of the additions to the train station were not in the original project documents. Even so, in 2024, the train station was officially open to the public in a grand televised opening, even though, according to Serbian law, after the reconstruction of any building before it can be open to the public, it must possess an operating permit. The railway station did not obtain this. And so, for several months, the
Public infrastructure, thinking because they're joined at the hip with government, they're above the law somehow. No, perish the thought. That never happens.
The train station became...
This is really interesting. Is this train station like is this the one thing that like broke the entire fucking country?
It would appear so.
Thousands, and even more than before, considering Serbia now hosts a fast rail linking Belgrade and Novi Sad together, two of the country's largest and most important cities. And soon enough, the fast rail would extend all the way to Budapest, which would make the train station even more important. However, on November 1st, just 4 months after the train station was opened, its canopy, weighing over 300 tons, collapsed and crushed 14 people.
14 people lost their lives. because a bunch of bloody Chinese laborers couldn't be bothered to do the job properly. Just wanted to cut corners everywhere. And the Serbian political leadership was dumb enough to go along with it. Because, oh my god, all this money from the Chinese, what could possibly go wrong? At this point, I think they're trying to not just be above the country's laws, but also above the laws of gravity. My goodness, it's awful, yeah.
Well, guys, no one could have saw that coming.
Instantly killing them, gravely injuring 3 others, and killing another one 10 days after succumbing to her own wounds from the collapse. A tragedy which was almost unparalleled in modern history of the nation, and an event that completely shocked the entire country. Immediately after, 3 days of mourning were declared in Novi Sad, and 1 day in the entire country. People started hitting the streets en masse to mourn together and hold a period of silence for the victims. However, the Serbian government had different priorities. In the immediate media reports, most of which are controlled by the government and current ruling party, the Serbian Progressive Party, or colloquially known as SNS, the reports started stating that the old
Nothing progressive about them. This is all regressive behavior.
canopy had collapsed, and how the canopy was not renovated since 1964, whilst at the same time completely glossing over the amount of victims the tragedy killed and their identities.
Oh yeah, 14, 15 people. In the eyes of the government, they don't matter. They're just taking the Senator Armstrong approach. Making the mother of all omelets, can't worry about a few broken eggs. The Progressive Policy Party stuck with policies dreamed up in the 1900s, yeah. They're ancient now. They're yesterday's news.
This was preposterous and nothing less of dumping an entire bag of salt onto a gaping wound, and many Serbs saw it as such. Almost immediately after these reports were published, several engineers...
And you know what, in the eyes of the government, they were probably just doing that to avoid liability. Some soulless little solicitor telling them, you can't even acknowledge this publicly because it'll open you up to liability. So admit no fault on your part. Because, hey, we don't want to get sued.
came out and publicly challenged the notion that the canopy was not renovated. Quickly after that, pictures started popping up showcasing the canopy before and after, clearly indicating that indeed it was affected during the renovation. In an aerial view of the building, the new canopy's design could be clearly seen, with green soil right on top of it. According to one theory, the soil which was put on top was not accounted for properly in the final calculations. It is believed that if the soil was real, it was able to hold on to moisture from rain and other weather conditions, which would further increase the strain on the structure's support. Examining the damage...
So, because they wanted to go green and virtue signal of look how environmentally friendly this is. 15 people lost their lives. That's my takeaway from all of this.
Where the canopy broke, cracks and tears in the concrete could be seen, where there were no beams, as well as rust in the metal that was tied to the canopy.
Seems small to most
it's
that
like an
causes
epic
a huge
disaster.
issue in Serbia. A Serb sticking a bottle up his bum did cause the Yugoslavia to collapse and civil war to rage.
Wait, what? Is that real, Shaka? What are you... Thank you for the bits. Is that... Wait, what? Wait, that's actually true? No. No way. The Dord Martinovic incident, when a Serb farmer from Kosovo was the center of a notorious incident in 1985 when he was treated for injuries caused by the insertion of a glass bottle into his anus. What? On 1st of May 1985, Dord Martinovic,
sodomized with a glass bottle,
old resident of the Kosovar town of Jalan, arrived at the local hospital with a broken bottle wedged in his rectum. He claimed that... Oh, God.
We've been attacked by two
He claimed that
Albanian
he had been
men.
attacked by 2 Albanian men while he was working in the field. After being interrogated by the Yugoslav People's Army colonel, Martinovic reportedly admitted that his injuries were self-inflicted in a
Oh,
botched
God.
attempt at masturbation. But, like, why a bottle? Public investigators reported that the prosecutor made a written conclusion from which it appears that the wounded performed the act of self-satisfaction in his field and put an empty glass bottle of sparkling water on a wooden stick, stuck it into the ground, and after that he sat on the bottle and enjoyed. Oh my god. Okay, so
What the fuck?
the case was met with a flood of nationalist and anti-Albanian statements in the Serbian press, and this was in of itself a significant development. The Yugoslav government had for many years
It was
made...
like the spark that lit the dry hay barn that was Yugoslavia.
Except that it was the bottle that went up the guy's ass that started the whole thing. Oh my gosh. And then they're saying that, like, that he was attacked by these people and it wasn't him sticking it up his ass. Oh my god. It, like, became a race war. They wrote poetry about it.
Doesn't take much to do that in the Balkans, TBH.
With the broken
No.
bottle on a stake, as though through a lamb but alive.
But we're getting
They
off
went
track
to
here.
enjoy- Putting someone on a bottle is purely Slavic fun. What the fuck?
The main structure. Furthermore, in the original
the
project
fuck?
plans, the attic was envisioned to be empty, but later on, glass was added on top of it. The design upon further examination appeared to be flawed from the get-go, as the weight of the canopy was mainly supported by cantilever beams instead of columns, which would have provided additional load support, especially
Yeah, it
in the
does look
case
kinda
of the
sus.
Where were the
additional weight
columns?
added on top of
There
it.
is a reason
The evidence was
Chinese
damning,
concrete
and the
is
people were
called
exposed.
tofu. It's very well documented that they cut
Yeah.
corners on construction.
I have
Oh,
heard that as well.
always.
Optimistic Pet.
Always. As I was saying before we were so rudely interrupted, if anyone's seen videos, the old videos of Serpent ZA and Laowai 86 traveling across China, they've been to some of these ghost cities, some of these real estate developments, and it's construction that's only like a year or two old, and it's already looking like it's coming apart. And, you know, so much of it really is just to keep people busy. To keep people in the construction industry busy. They're not actually building something to last, because that would threaten the job security of people working in construction, which so many people from the countryside were drawn into the cities and recruited for construction. The thinking of the CCP being keep them busy, give them jobs, make sure they have just enough. That way they can't organize and possibly overthrow the government. Because there's too many hungry, starving farmers out there. There's more of them than there are of us. They still show off tofu drag and talk about how Belt and Road is exporting the drag construction. This is comic book levels of villainy. It is. It really is. And the Chinese do this. They do it to everyone. And they do it to themselves, too. So much of the things, if it's Chinese built, it's going to fall apart in a short while, because they don't build anything to last. And yes, the irony of me announcing I'm going to play a game that is made in China, Wuthering Waves, is not lost on me. But at least that seems to be fairly decently built. They can at least get that right.
Thank you for the bits. I've heard that too.
In the case of the additional weight added on top of it. The evidence was damning.
That story is in the annals of history.
and the people were expecting answers. However, the elected officials would refuse to give any statements regarding the project nor release further documents on the project, instead choosing to focus on preserving their image and PR. This, as you can imagine, did not sit well with the public at all. The station, as I mentioned before, was extremely popular since its inception and used by thousands daily, be it to commute to work, university, home, or just to hang.
I bet a code teardown would show a lot of its either pre-made assets or stolen from other games, line for line. More than likely, yes. Kodo Games, if you were to look into the code, it would probably be a carbon copy of Hoyoverse code from Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, Honkai Impact III, all of their games, and that in turn probably taken from somewhere else too. That would not surprise me in the least.
Hang out with friends. Virtually every student in the region used the station regularly, and virtually it could have been any one of them lying under the rubble. And so, immediately after the government denied accountability, thousands rushed to the street to protest. 4 days after, due to the immense pressure from the public, the Minister of Construction, Traffic and Infrastructure, Goran Vesic, resigned. During his resignation, he still maintained his innocence and the lack of involvement in the project, even though numerous...
Of course he will, because at that point he's just trying to save his own hide and keep himself from getting sued.
Occasions before, he was constantly in PR videos promoting the station and his party's words.
That is one of those things that will never leave you. You could say it was jarring.
Pain, Pecco.
500 Trackman, thank you so much for the bits.
Constantly in PR videos promoting the station and his party's works in pushing Serbia forward. As this was going on, the independent media was working...
This is not pushing Serbia forward. Because now you've got a busted up train station. You've got 15 people dead from the fact that the people you hired to build it did a shite job. And now you've got, I mean, presumably you've got no trains coming in. So if anything, this is a step backwards.
To uncover and publish documents related to the renovation works of the train station and uncovering the roles of those involved in the command chain of the project. The public started calling for the apprehension and jailing of those responsible, mainly the state higher-ups. The government, seeing it could not hide the disastrous collapse of the canopy under the rug, then proceeded to shift the narrative in an effort to avoid blame, to also finding and prosecuting those responsible, starting up an investigation and interviewing around 50 workers in the lower end of the project's chain of command, essentially trying to find an adequate scapegoat to shift the blame.
Yeah, they should have started at the top. Instead, they were starting lower down on the food chain, because they were searching for the patsy. They're searching for some fall guys. Someone that they could just scapegoat into all of this and say, you know, don't blame us, blame them, blame these lower-level functionaries. It's all their fault. Clang bang, send them off to prison. Or disappear them into the night. Have them meet with some sort of unfortunate accident. Meanwhile, everybody at the top picks themselves up, dusts themselves off, dust off the old CV, go find something else to run into the ground.
Although more and more documentation was hitting the public's eye, the state's prosecutor's office, however, remained silent, and no action was being taken to prosecute the state's prosecutor's office.
Dude, I don't know what this writing is, but it looks like a bunch of emojis.
It's Cyrillic.
Doesn't it? It just looks like a bunch of faces.
It's a Cyrillic alphabet.
Like here.
And yeah, good luck trying to make any sense of that. I don't even know how Cyrillic readers even do it.
however, remained silent, and no action was being taken to prosecute those responsible for the tragedy. What was enough, and even more people went to the streets to protest, with a large mob of protesters forming right outside of Novi Sad town hall, with the public demanding that the government actually do something and prosecute those involved in the reconstruction project. The protest held was peaceful, with people gathering around to make noise and scream their demands at the government. However, amongst this crowd, several
this
fully
one, like,
masked persons appeared.
You know, like this one where they do like this, they do like that one. Like, see,
Least racist man in the
it's like
Balkans.
right there. Like, it's like little emojis.
Who started vandalizing the town hall and nearby buildings by
Challenge:
breaking their
the
windows and
Balkans stay
spray painting
semi-stable
graffiti
for
over
1
them.
minute difficulty.
Within the town hall,
Impossible,
a police force was
inconceivable,
stationed.
quite possibly unobtainable.
Shago, thank you for the
That is possible.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like the bar is so low here, people. Let's just do things properly. Don't fuck shit up. And, you know, while you're at it, maybe don't take money from the Chinese. Because, as we've seen, they're not to be trusted, they can't do the job properly, and they're just going to fuck you over. Ah, you're back. What happened? What, did we lose connection again? I swear to fucking God. What is so difficult about maintaining a stable connection? I'm so sorry, chat. Didn't see any breaks this time. Oh no, I was gone 20 minutes assuming it was done. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Winino. We had a hiccup in the connection and I had to restart stream. So I am sorry about that. But yeah, I hope, I pray that it's all right. Ah, so it wasn't all the comments you were making. I mean, that could be possible. Could be somebody not liking what I have to say and thinking that they can silence me. I won't rule it out. But if you hear a hoofbeat, it's probably a horse and not a zebra. So my first reaction is just shit internet connection. And I probably need to just upgrade my ISP. Go with a different one. Which I may be doing that in the future here if this keeps up.
That entire area is kind of just PvP enabled. Like all the way down, right? Like this is like freaking PvP, like right here, like this entire like area. All the way down here, including all of this area, this entire thing here, and then like here, and it like goes like this. This is all like PvP zone.
Who started vandalizing the town hall and nearby buildings by breaking their windows and spray painting graffiti over them. Within the town hall, a police force was stationed tasked with protecting the building. However, despite only a handful of these masked persons vandalizing, they took no action whatsoever to prevent them, even though the thousands of other protesters condemned the vandals as actions. The same night, President Vučić was scheduled to come and visit the city and hold a speech regarding the tragedy. However, instead of going to any public space or building, Vučić only visited SNS party buildings. Upon his arrival, most of the SNS...
That sends a horrible message, especially in a time of mourning, when you're only interested in going to party headquarters and basically hanging out with loyalists instead of being amongst the people. This is... wow. What a dick. What an absolute dick.
Venues were severely vandalized, with their windows being broken, red paint scattered all over the venues' exteriors, and the Serbian flag being ripped apart. Now, unlike in other countries, predominantly Western ones, where flag desecration is seen as a valid form of protest and more or less a regular occurrence, in Serbia this is far from the case. Serbians, no matter their political orientation, deeply care for their state and flag.
They actually have national pride. And yeah, the further east into Europe you go, you try to burn a country's flag, you will probably not live to see tomorrow. You are likely going to get jumped by the locals, and you will not live to see tomorrow. They don't fuck around with that sort of thing over there. So you carry the flag of a certain Eastern European country, you damn well better treat it with respect.
Desecrating the Serbian flag in Serbia is virtually unheard of and incomprehensibly frowned upon, as the flag is not seen as representing the government, but the people. The flag being ripped apart and...
It should represent the people, not the government.
Yeah, they really should.
I think they're onto something, honestly.
Taking action in preventing the town
they absolutely are onto
aroused
something.
Suspicion that the government was behind the violent attacks in an effort to bastardize the image of the protesters.
They probably were. This is not unheard of with governments around the world sneaking in agent saboteurs into protest movements to try and make them look bad, commit false flag attacks, all of it in an attempt to discredit the protesters. There is no government in the world, I don't think, that is above such things. And if you think that somehow they do believe that they are somehow above that, I'm sorry, you are woefully naive. When you are that outnumbered by this many people, and you are so scared to protect your own power and everything that you have built up to that point, you will do literally anything, possibly even commit murder, in order to keep it.
A move that is unfortunately very prevalent in the current Serbian political landscape, and has been seen numerous times before, as was the case with the bulldozing of the 12 buildings in Savamala. Suspicions further arose when Vučić held a speech in front of one SNS venue where he made a fuss about the desecrated flag and how he'll put those who've done that to justice. Again, completely glossing over the tragedy and victims and trying to antagonize the protesters. The same night, the police dressed in civilian clothing made their way to the protests and arrested 14 people, mainly peaceful student protesters, whilst the vandals disappeared with no trace. The next day, after the town hall protest,
starting to smell like a false flag.
The government held a session in which they condemned the protesters and publicly accused the opposition for organizing them. In an effort to show how they were doing something, several ministers resigned and 12 people were jailed due to the fall of the canopy. Amongst the jailed persons was Vesic and another minister.
And this is the same thing in Russia. The flag is a symbol of the Russian people.
However, just after a
you do not desecrate the Russian flag. You think the Serbians are bad? Try going up against a pissed off Russian. You had best pray for deliverance. Or pray that your soul will reach heaven. Because at that point I don't think even God himself could probably help you. Have you taken a look at Canadian politics? Sounds just like our PM and the NDP. Hopefully the election comes out sooner. Yeah, I've heard that Canada's got a new Prime Minister, and that he's actually just worse than Trudeau. We didn't think that was possible, and yet here we are.
of days in custody.
I think that's
both
ideal,
were released,
rather
while
than
the
it
14
being a
students remained
government
in prison.
symbol.
As rumor has it, the incarcerated ministers were provided with newly renovated rooms with comfortable beds specifically suited for their needs, while at the same time, the imprisoned students were placed in
Is it
cold
Travis?
rundown prisons with pests, parasites like lice, and mold being present. This just further made the Serbian populace's blood boil, and protests started erupting all over the country, with thousands organizing and blocking traffic in silence. In one of the traffic blockade protests, a student was physically attacked by several passerbys, whose identities were later revealed to be of several SNS functionaries.
Anything associated with the World Economic Forum is just bad news. Oh yes. I mean, they're not there to make things better. They're there to make things worse, in order to increase their power and control over more governments in the world. It's you let those people in and they will just make a pig's breakfast of everything.
On November 25th, due to the attack on one of their students, the University of Dramatic Arts in Belgrade rose up in a mass protest, with the students taking over the campus and establishing a blockade of the university. The students made their demands simple and public: release the identities of the attackers from the previous protest and prosecute them in full force according to the law.
Yep.
Things start to snowball as this event sparked even more protests and traffic blockades, with more and more students and civilians coming out to put the country to a halt. However, as more came out to the streets to protest, more violent clashes started occurring, with more passerby attacking the protesters, and several vehicles even running students over. Meanwhile, all this chaos was unfolding. The prosecutor's office was still not taking any action, with no indictments nor convictions taking place, and the attackers freely walking away. With the people's voice falling on deaf ears, the students took matters into their own hands. Day after day, one university after another got taken over by the student body, and a spring of blockades erupted, with classes grinding to a halt. As of writing this video, all public universities in Belgrade, Novi Sad, Niš, and Kragujevac have been taken over by students and have been blockaded, while even more public and private universities are joining their ranks. Unable to be ignored, this hit.
There's a lot of people protesting, and
this is getting out of control.
That's crazy.
National and international news, bringing the Serbian government into the limelight. In
America, a lot of protesters just want free shit.
Fashion, government officials...
Yeah, these protesters actually seem to just want a functioning society. Can you imagine if more people in the West started protesting for that? I mean, just how refreshing, number one, but also what a concept.
Would state to the press that these protests are funded and organized by the local opposition and foreign powers, providing virtually little to no evidence to support their claims.
Very short-sighted,
to be fair,
indeed.
On one of the protests, two notorious oppositionary MPs, Dragan Đilas and Marinka Tepic, joined the protest and took pictures holding one of the banners, after which they immediately left. However, the students directly slammed the government accusations by refusing any and all party affiliation, acting completely as sovereign actors.
Yeah, there's like, no, you're not going to co-opt us. You're not going to co-opt us. You can't just hold up your pre-printed sign, stand around for a photo op for a few minutes, and then be on your merry way and act like you're one of us. You're not. You're part of the problem.
You see, unlike many other revolutions, the Serbian student one was organized without ideological grounds. The student body rising up is composed of many people from all corners of the political compass. The main demands of the students are the complete publishing of documents of the train station reconstruction project done in the mutual effort by Serbia and China, dropping charges of the arrested student protesters, for the police to officially sue the persons who attacked students and professors protesting, as well as a 20% increase for universities.
Okay, so they're not completely without demands for more free shit. Funny I found you through your discovery of a new Oshi. Oh, yes, you're talking about Leaflet here. Yes, this, yeah, she is... I've really grown to like her in a short amount of time. And yeah, she does excellent work. I've got several VTubers whom I've really grown to admire for just their unabashed, unapologetic takes on, well, everything. Just, they're so refreshingly honest and just frank dialogue with people. Gave you a shout out on Legal Mind. Was that you? Yeah, you know what? Now that I think of it, I recognize the name. But thank you so much, Wahiname. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I can't tell you how much that made my day. That really, really made my day. So I thank you so much for that. That was... I had a really rough week this past week. So it really not only made my day, but you made the week so much better for me. Adds reason why I'm normally on YouTube. That's understandable. I'm not monetized yet over on YouTube. But yeah, that's we'll get there eventually. But yeah, I appreciate you. I appreciate the shout out. And yeah, you know what? Just for that. Let me see if I can... Yeah, here we go. Actually, no. Hang on. Not going to do this in Streamlabs. Let me go over to... Okay, back. You know what, Winino? Since you made my day, and practically made my week for that matter, for being so kind to shout me out on Legal Mindset like that. There you go. Enjoy a gifted sub. It's on the house. Thank you. You're most welcome. That, like I said, that really just made my day, and if anything, made my week. And it's nice to be noticed. You've helped me to see that what I'm doing is having an impact on the people that are taking notice. So I have just been absolutely chuffed by that ever since. So again, thank you so much. Right, let's press on, please.
They just like throw this one in there like at the end. It's like, yeah, this bad thing happened. Like, fuck, I'm like, oh, okay. Drop the charge on the students. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
all right, sure.
fair enough.
Suing the people who beat them up. All right, okay.
Yeah.
Give us 20% more money. Like, oh, I don't know about that.
I mean, at that point, it'd just be sauce for the goose, wouldn't it?
Just like adding it on to the end.
No problem. Got to help out the bros. I really appreciate it. It's, yeah, we're all going to help each other out. Rising tide lifts all boats. A firm believer in that sort of thing.
And give us some more money.
Milan Juric and his predecessor resigned. The organization and idea for the blockades was almost exclusively spread via word of mouth and social media. The decision to blockade a university was made via a democratic vote, with many universities utilizing their student portals, giving each student the option to decide whether or not for their university to declare a blockade, with the vast majority of students voting in favor. Additionally, the blockades have been organized into their own representative bodies and delegates whose members are democratically elected, and changed if the group sees them as not fulfilling their elected...
You want to know what...
That's absolutely incredible that happens. This is... Yeah, this is... it's so organic and yet also so well organized. And that really is the key. That's what a lot of people have been saying this entire time. The people who are the most organized win. You know, the people can win. An organic social movement can win, but you've got to get organized. And yeah, these people, they really got their shit together. It shows what they're capable of, but it also shows what happens when you push people too far.
I'm not saying this is what's happening here, but you know what's really, really annoying is when people...
If only people in the West could get their shit together like this movement here in Serbia. Just imagine what could be accomplished.
People do this in like public schools for like kids, where they're like, oh yeah, a bunch of kids like decided, you know, a bunch of high schoolers decided, you know, that they didn't like this thing, so they all walked out and they all protested. Most of those guys just want to get out of class. They actually don't give a shit. They just want to get out of class for free.
And that could also be the case, yeah. But they're using that to their advantage. Having people show up in large numbers like that. It's like, yeah, if you're going to cut class, at least do something constructive. At least do something productive. Yeah, main reason why I started paying attention to politics due to the trucker convoy. Yeah, the trucker convoys, I believe those started up in Canada. They eventually made their way to the US. And in the UK, you had the farmer protests, very similar. It scared a lot of people in power. It really got them scared. Which is why you saw the attempts to debank, jail them for protesting, cutting class even though you're paying for them. When you've been in classes from primary school up to high school, you've been at it for so long, it's like you don't even care. Yeah, I'm Canadian, by the way. Ah. Well, welcome in from Canada, eh? Sorry, had to. Anyways, but yeah, these movements, they have really, you can tell they have really scared a lot of people in power. Trucker protest, the farmer protest. January 6th, anyone? Those really got people in power running scared. Because the absolute draconian, ham-fisted attempt to clamp down on all of that those were not signs of strength. Those were not displays of strength. If they were really unafraid of what these people were capable of, they would have just let it happen. And they would have just, you know, it's like, all right, let them spin their wheels, let them make their voice heard, let them have their little protest. All right, you're done? Okay, moving on. But no. Instead, we have again what I can only describe as a very ham-fisted attempt at draconianism, of clamping down on all of this. And really, those in power only do that when they're afraid. Especially when you've got leftist establishmentarian types neoliberals, neoconservatives in positions of power, that's what they do when they're afraid. If they're not afraid, they just let it happen. But then again, they're probably also funding the ones that they just let happen. But this sort of reaction, Serbian government's afraid of these people. Because they're afraid they could win.
With no one person being the face of the movement. Within the blockaded university,
Because I do it if I had school and they're like, you want to go protest some shit to like get out of class, because there's like a test today, I'd be like, yeah, fuck yeah.
anyone who is
I mean, yeah, cynically, yeah, a lot of people are going to do that. But speaking to this other point that was raised of not really having one face in the movement, that is effective. If there is no one shepherd, your enemies can't strike at them and then make the sheep scatter. If it's just sort of an inorganic blob, you don't know which target to strike at. No problem, I use them a lot in person, but not in text, oddly. Yeah, I'm kind of the same way.
who is not a student and doesn't possess a student ID, known in Serbia as an index booklet, is denied entrance. Alongside this, the media is also barred from entering unless the blockading students democratically vote to allow them inside. Although several political parties
Also effective. Because the media is often agent saboteurs themselves, working at the behest of those who are in power. You know, the media they're not your friends. The age of them speaking truth to power, anything like that, those days are long gone. And I don't think they ever really existed in places like Serbia. No, the media is there to uphold the narratives of people in power. They are enforcers. And so these students were right to bar the media from entry to their meetings. Because they knew that the media would not be on their side and would be looking for anything and everything to smear them and try to discredit their movement. So when you cannot reason with people like that, you just have to deny them targets. If you keep denying them targets, it just confounds them and frustrates them. And eventually they either change their tune and start providing you more positive press coverage, or they just continue to be locked out. Cough CBC, getting their funding slashed as soon as the Conservatives take control of government. Yeah, it's probably long overdue for the CBC in Canada, the BBC in the UK. I would say even to a certain extent NHK over in Japan, though I doubt that's ever going to happen over in Japan. They're effectively a one-party system over there. Taxpayer-funded propaganda, hell no, but if they were more bipartisan, it would have been fine. Yeah, that should be the way it is for all state-funded media, regardless of if it's the CBC in Canada, PBS in the United States, the BBC in Britain, NHK over in Japan, any of these state-run media outlets. It needs to be fair and even-handed. And yet for a long time, it hasn't been. And so what we've seen in the US is that, okay, you're not going to do that. You're going to constantly try and make us look bad and try to undermine our mission. All right, you're getting your funding cut. You're either going to play ball and play nice, or no more money for you. The gravy train stops here. The attitude of the government being you wouldn't even vote for us anyway, So why the hell should we continue to fund our own opposition? I mean, what a concept. They actually stood up for their own self-interests, which they had every right to do. Everyone has a right to stand up for their own self-interest. It does not make you a bad person. It does not make you evil. It just makes you a human being who's trying to survive. And don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise. Take a stand for your own self-interest. Because nobody else is going to do it for you.
Parties reached out to help support the students, they have all been rejected. While the main way the students sustain themselves is via the donations regular citizens make, with many pensioners regularly stopping by the universities and bringing them food in an act of solidarity. Since the eruption of the student revolution, the government has constantly publicly...
And you know, that's smart. It's an opportunity to build relations within the community. Students just saying to pensioners, like, you know, hey, you in a rush? Well, have a seat. Let's have some tea. Let's enjoy this this food that you brought us. Simple things like that, especially when you get to the age of a pensioner, they mean so much. And it's also an effective way of... I mean, it sounds so cynical saying it like this, and I don't mean it that way, but it is a way to garner sympathy for your cause. But it's also just a good thing, the right thing to do. I mean, just hanging out with Gran and Grandpa and Uncle and Auntie that are checking in, that maybe have some sympathy for your movement. I'm just saying, hey, you come all this way, you brought all this food, thank you so much. Why don't we sit down to tea, enjoy this together, and just, you know, talk about each other's lives, see what's happening in your world. And here's what's going on with us. This is why we're doing what we're doing. Just those simple things, those simple human interactions. They are beyond worth their weight in gold. I hope we get Doge. They're doing God's work there. So much waste on programs in foreign land. Yes, really. Some of the things that they absolutely wasted money on, it's unconscionable. And I'm glad that they've stopped. Ruby Gemstone, welcome in. Thank you for redeeming Not First. Also, hello.
Diminish them, call them easily influenced by foreign powers, and call on them to abandon their posts and return to
Russian propaganda.
So they can work for a side that's actually looking out for them.
It's all
implying
propaganda.
The current state. Although initially the president claimed that the students are attempting to overthrow.
Yeah, they're just... It's such a tired old trope, and it's completely divorced from reality. Not everything is Russian propaganda. Just because it goes against your established narratives and may have a negative effect on your interests does not make it Russian propaganda. And if it goes against your interests, well, maybe you need to reevaluate what your interests really are. And maybe seek some alignment of those interests with the best interest of the people.
For the government, later he claimed that all their demands have been met, showcasing empty registers that were allegedly all the documents about the railway station, whilst also printing out allegedly random words on a piece of paper and again showcasing it to the public, claiming these were all the important documents relating to the project and claiming...
Wow. If I were in the position of the Serbian people, I would be insulted. Printing out random words on pages and just... They really must think their own population is just a bunch of blithering idiots. If the Russian thing is such a huge issue, why aren't they trying to dissolve or destroy it? I swear, every time with that rhetoric. It's not even necessarily real in most cases. It's like, oh, you spoke with Vladimir Putin one time. You must be a bad person. No. Politicians are not just politicians, they're also diplomats. They're representatives of their own countries. And that often involves talking with people that may or may not be friendly to your country. Kim Jong-un is even less of a celebrity figure than Vladimir Putin, and yet people still talk to him because it's important to keep lines of dialogue open. Because if everyone just isolates themselves from each other and they don't talk to each other, eventually those paranoid, intrusive thoughts are going to take over the discourse, and before you know it, you've got countries that gaslight and propagandize themselves into war with each other. And when you're dealing with potential nuclear superpowers, that never ends well for anyone. Yes, they just don't want diplomacy, is what I'm getting from them. Yeah, it's like this push in recent weeks by NATO countries to almost get on this war footing. Almost like they're mobilizing for war against Russia. And meanwhile, the Americans are trying to broker some sort of peace deal. It's as though NATO doesn't want peace, they want war. Well, newsflash for any of the so-called leadership in NATO countries, the people have spoken, they don't want war. And especially in the case of Britain, you've got a majority of the youth in the UK that they don't even think anything's worth fighting for with Britain. They don't. It's like, if drafted, they would probably dodge the draft. They'd run away to some other country and seek asylum. Because they're not going to get drafted into the British Army, or the Royal Navy, or the RAF, or the Marines. And go off and most likely be sent to their deaths in a pointless war. That we're dealing with two nuclear powers, Britain and Russia, that can only really end with the exchange of nuclear weapons. We've spent the better part of the 20th century trying to avoid precisely this sort of situation. Maintaining a battle readiness, but always seeking peace first. And for a long time it worked. Not only that, but even as far back as the 1980s, the top brass of the various branches of the military in Britain, and even in the United States and other NATO allies, have said you don't want a draft. The best thing for each of our countries is an all-volunteer force. Because the people that are drafted and don't want to be there will find any reason to get out of it and fuck things up. That's just the brutal, honest reality of people who are drafted. If they really don't want to be there, and really don't want to risk their lives, they will figure out a way to get out of service. Whether it is draft dodging, whether it is injuring themselves in some sort of engineered accident, or desertion, or whatever. They will do it. And more cynically, the sorts of people that Britain would draft for the various branches of the military are probably people in the same demographics that have been complaining about replacement migration. And so in the eyes of two-tier Keir's government, it's an opportunity to kill two birds with one stone. Send the native youth off to die in a pointless war, and replace them with more migrants on boats. That is how little they actually care, and that is how much they actively hate the very people that they govern. Even worse, sabotaging to get away from fighting. Oh yes. And that sort of sabotage runs the risk of not only injuring and killing the saboteur, but also the people in their unit. Yes, making the situation even worse. What was that one famous post? We'll know they're planning for war when all the Army-Navy commercials switch to white guys in badass cinematics. I think you're exactly right, Zangada. Because that's who they'll be targeting. Fragging the officer is a famous example of why drafting is undesirable. Yeah. This is a truth that is echoed from the top brass of any branch of military in any country to, well, most countries anyway, all the way down to the enlistees, some of whom I've had an absolute pleasure of working alongside in other forms of service, namely the civil service of government. I had both an American Army and Navy veteran tell me the same thing. They were both enlistees, not officers, but even both of them were telling me probably the worst. It sounds like a good idea, the idea of 2 years mandatory military service for young people in the US. They said the practical reality is you don't want that. The best thing, what's in the best interest for the military, is people who want to be there. There are some circumstances where the opposite is true. I think of, for example, Singapore, which is a much smaller country, a nation state, or a city-state rather, where if they don't have conscription, then they don't really have much of a military. And that actually helps with the national cohesion there. So some exceptions, sure. But by and large, when we're talking about Western countries, NATO allies, a draft would be the worst idea for them. South Korea is able to do it, yes. another example of a smaller country, but also given their location on the map, given their neighbors to the north, understandable that they would have conscription. Wouldn't be so bad if there were patriotism, but sadly not a lot these days. Yeah, and the very same people in charge that want to draft young people and send them off to a pointless war are the same people who have done everything in their power to destroy everything that makes people patriotic. Yeah, patriotism is a dirty word to all of those people in power. And yet, they are just so... they're just so schizophrenic at times. Or perhaps even just so sociopathic and psychopathic that they will turn right around the next minute and start babbling on about how it's your patriotic duty to be drafted into the military and go off and fight a pointless war against Russia and die. Patriotism is just a weapon and a tool that they will use to stay in power and manipulate people and get rid of what they view to be the problem children of society, most of them being the native population.
They were now published as they were shown on television.
Serbia
After these
for
attempts
Russia?
proved futile, he then claimed he already met all the demands and to
I was more making a joke about how anything that you don't believe, anything that you don't agree with is propaganda.
demands and to sweeten the deal, promised to give subsidies to young people for the purchase of
Thanks,
their
Ragnar.
first home. However, this
That's just a cynical move to buy them off. He's just like, what do you want? Money? How much? How much to make you go away? Meanwhile, gaslighting him, saying, I've already given you what you want. What are you talking about? Team Canada is honestly so stupid once the Tariff War started. They tossed it 9 years ago, only to bring it back up as soon as stuff hits the fan. Yeah. They bring it up whenever it's convenient for them. They've yet to actually institute it, though. I think even they realize that the backlash would just be too much for them to handle. So they'll talk about it, but much like the meme, nothing ever happens.
students continued protesting as they
What?
stated that for the purchase
They would have to engineer a massive false flag attack and absolutely propagandize and gaslight the hell out of people in order to get them to willingly go along with that. It would be a Herculean effort, which they have done before. See the whole thing with COVID-19 as an example. But, again, Herculean effort. I don't think they have it in them at this point. I don't even think they have the money to pull that off anymore. They don't use words to communicate, only to accrue power. The mouth noises they make and funny glyphs they tap onto the glowing tablet don't matter, only if it gives them more power. Yeah. That is the light switch brain sort of thing going on with a lot of these empty suit politicians. Is, does it protect my power? Does it give me more power? If yes, they will do it or say it. If not, they won't. Yeah, we got actual journalists to, thanks to be informed, no useless government mouthpiece.
of
What?
and to sweeten the deal, promised to give subsidies to young people for the purchase of their first.
We'll give you money for your first home. Just stop
Oh
protesting.
my god, they're just giving them money.
They,
Dude, that's
yeah, trying to bribe them with tax money, which is money they themselves pay to them. Let's go. Oh, how nice and compassionate and generous of you. You are offering to give us our own fucking money back. Money which you stole from these people through taxation. How generous of you. They really think they're stupid. They really think the people that they govern are blithering idiots. It just shows how little they think of the very people they were elected to serve.
Dude, that's so fucking corrupt. I hate when the government does this. They just like give people money to like don't be mad at me. Here's money. I hate it.
However,
It's
the
just
students
bribery.
continued protesting as they stated that the president of Serbia does not hold jurisdiction over the institutions that are responsible for meeting their demands. The student body also claimed that they are demanding for the proper work of the Serbian.
I mean, that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah, it was... The students realized, wait, this is a rug pull. Because later you're just going to say, oh, I don't have the power to do that. Oops, sorry. Moving on.
About like the student debt forgiveness too. It just feels like a total bribe.
Government.
Yeah, and it's something. What if they were really serious about that, about student debt forgiveness, they would have done it already. They've done it piecemeal, here and there. But if they were really serious about it, they would just jubilee the debt. And they're not doing it because they're not serious about it, because they see it as a way to keep people under their thumb. Because they're so afraid of opening the floodgates of, well, you'll forgive this form of debt, why won't you forgive this other form of debt? No one really stopping to think, well, maybe we really should just jubilee the debt. Because the debtors are actually terrible people. And the only way they stay in power is that we keep giving money to them. Maybe it's time we actually fucked over the people, the moneylenders, who have been keeping people in debt servitude this whole time. Maybe then people would have a chance to grow and be prosperous if they didn't have all these bloody loan payments to make. And I don't want to hear about people saying, well, you signed a contract, blah, blah, blah. Or, well, I paid off all my loans. Why do you get to just have them forgiven? You know what? Good for you. You did all the right moves. Sorry you couldn't wait it all out like the rest of us. But this is about more than just you and your individual financial position. This is about more than you and your ego and pride, which is really what is speaking when you say things like that. That's your pride and ego talking. When really the proper thing, the right thing to do, is to set aside pride and ego and focus on the greater good. Of, you know what? There's a lot of people that are hurting in debt servitude right now. They need a break. We all could do with a break. The people need a break. Time to jubilee the debt. Give them the fresh start that you yourself are boasting about. and not get caught up in how you got there as long as you got there. I decided the winning move was not to play when I went to college, never took loans. That's very good, Zangra. I do be laughing at my sister who took loans. Yeah, same, but I was in a different situation from the rest. Yes, situations vary from person to person. But at this point, the people are suffering under the yoke of debt servitude. From predatory institutions that never really should have been handing out these loans in the first place. All of this needed to be a lot cheaper for people to afford. The fact remains a lot of people got taken advantage of. And oftentimes when they were at an age when they didn't even know better. So why don't we just make it easier on everyone? And I mean everyone. And just jubilee the debt. Let's give everyone a fresh start. Got diagnosed with epilepsy at the end of high school. Couldn't find time after being stable. I mean, fair enough. But yes, I maintain that position. Jubilee the debt. Just jubilee the debt. Yeah, the job market is horrendous. Glad I stayed. It is. A lot of people... Glad I stayed at my current job. I see, yes. It's been horrendous for a lot of people. It has been a struggle. I hold an MBA in finance. And I am 10 years after graduation, only just now getting up to the average level of what an MBA graduate makes. That's 10 years too long, in my opinion. And I'm not the only one. There are some people that they just never made it post-graduation. Well, they're still struggling. It's not right. That's not the way things should be. People deserve better than that. And we're sick of hearing boomer talk about pull yourself up by your bootstraps and go walk into the nearest place that you want a job and give a firm handshake to the manager and hand them your paper resume. Doesn't work that way anymore. World's changed from those days. And if anything, the bootstraps are gone. Because they got mortgaged off along with everything else. Or stolen by the older generations. That seem to have absolutely no interest whatsoever in leaving an inheritance to the next generation. Which will be forever to their scorn and shame. Should be illegal posting ghost listings. It should be. And yet it's not. Because too many people are concerned about goosing the numbers rather than giving hard-working individuals a job. Giving their first shot at building a life for themselves. It is both infuriating and tragic at the same time. We all deserve so much better than what we got. Ghost listings are an excuse to import cheap labour from India and other countries. I can believe that, yes. And that also needs to stop. companies large and small have got to realize you're not just in this to make a buck. You are there to provide some sort of service, some sort of value to the economy and to the community. And that includes providing honest jobs at honest wages. Honest, livable wages. And if you can't do that, then you just don't deserve to be in business. If your whole business model is dependent upon the importation of cheap labor, when you've got perfectly good labor pools to choose from locally, then you just don't need to be in business. Cut a few corners here and there, starting with the salaries of the executives. So you make 50 or 75,000 rather than 250,000. I think you'll get by. So you make 15 million in gross profits rather than 20 million. I think you'll be all right. Figure it out. Pull yourselves up by your bootstraps, as you so want to tell everyone else. Meme of Tim Hortons becoming Sing Hortons, considering all you see is Indians. It's unsustainable over the long term. And on a psychological and even subconscious level, people want to be served by businesses staffed up with employees who look like they're part of the community. People want to do business with others that look like they're from around there. I mean, that's just a human thing. We're naturally wary of outsiders because for so long, our very survival was at stake. We need them locals. Jesus, hardly ever see them when going into establishment. Exactly. Why would I want to be served by someone who struggles to speak my language? And who doesn't even remotely look like me or act like me. People need that level of comfort. Otherwise, they're guarded, and they're not willing to part with their money. Because otherwise, you just look like a traveling snake oil salesman from out of town who's just going to pick up your stagecoach and ride right out as soon as you have duped enough suckers into giving you their money. I don't blame them. I blame the government for allowing this. Yeah, I mean, you can't blame the people coming in from outside. They're just seeking a better life. They're seeking more money. No one can blame. That's just human. The blame rests at the level of government for allowing this sort of thing to happen. for creating all of the perverse incentives for this to happen. The foreigner, the outsider, is just being used by the government as a sort of meat shield.
Institutions and for them to do their job. Even so, after the announcement was made by President Vučić, on the official state website, documents regarding the renovation project started to be published. Alongside this, the budget increase for university funding was adopted. But this was yet still far from the demands imposed by the students, and the blockades continued.
They're just
In
like, you don't
backlash,
fucking
the
get it, do
government
you?
continued to diminish the protests, claiming that more students oppose the blockades than they support them, even though universities decided via a democratic process to enact them, and the numbers clearly state the opposite. Further, student bodies from ex-Yugoslav republics voiced their support of the Serbian protesters and organized morale-raising events for them. Nevertheless, on December 22nd, 2024,
Damn,
the
Croatia makes
largest of
good
the
guns.
protests was held in Belgrade at Slavia Square, where over 100,000 people gathered and held 15 minutes of silence for the victims
The gun
of
on
the
my
train
desk is,
station canopy. While the period
The
of
gun on my desk is from Croatia. HS product made in
Something
Croatia.
else I like about Leaflet. Sweet little Asian girl from California that has gone completely native in a new Texas environment and has become, both her and her mum have just become absolute gun nuts, and I am here for it. I actually had my younger brother become a Nepo since he couldn't find employment for almost a year. Sucks because he just graduated high school. Yeah, on the one hand, when you have to hustle and find employment because you need the money, I can totally understand seeking some form of Nepo hire or hiring friends you trust. It still can grate against people's sensibilities because so many of us either naively assumed or were foolishly taught that, hey, you go to school, you get good grades, graduate from university, there'll be a job waiting for you. People will be falling all over themselves to give you a job. And that just has not panned out for anyone, or for most people. You know, I've got an MBA in finance. I have never once held a financial job. Not in the traditional sense. And most of my recent jobs have come through working with recruiters. Because that's how broken the hiring system is in the United States and much of the Western world, that now you have to work with another layer of some other racket in order to get gainful employment. I don't see friends hiring as a nepotism hire. Where I work, many of my friends do, and they ask me to come in, and 100% of the people outside the friend group are the group that do 20% of the work. Yeah. What so many people are sold on is that your resume and your sheepskin are the ticket into gainful employment. And that just has not panned out for so many people. When more than two of us are out for some reason, everything goes to shit. That sounds like... I mean, that sounds like a whole other issue there. But probably speaks back to the original point that this is what happens when promises made are not promises kept, if you know what I mean. They say now that you need to network to get good jobs, aka make friends. That's what they say. What they really mean is that you have to kiss the arse of the right people. It's like, I'm sorry, I don't have time in my busy day to go out for sometimes hours on end and give some sort of Amway or Cutco knife elevator pitch over and over again to a bunch of people who may or may not give me a job. I'm sorry, but even I look at that and say, my time is far too valuable to waste on that. Here's my CV. If you're interested, if you're serious, let's talk. Otherwise, fuck off. I am not here to kiss anyone's ass or stroke anyone's ego. I'm here to do a job and get paid for it. If you are willing to pay me a day's pay for the day's work, we can talk. If not, fuck off. I know my value, I know my worth. And it is far too valuable to sit there and stroke some middle manager's ego or make them feel important somehow. I refuse to be exploited.
Silence was held. Thousands turned on the flashes of their cameras to show their...
What guns does Croatia make? This is my
So
Hellcat.
that's where the lights are coming
Hellcat
from.
is by Springfield Hellcat is by HS Product, made in Croatia. Celebratory desktop.
Oh, yes.
No, I'm very careful with my guns. There's like no fucking way I would desktop or accidentally like
No.
make a
We
mistake or something like
we
that.
don't want an
I'm
accident.
I always double triple check everything.
And as well she should. Accidental discharges are, depending on the jurisdiction that you're in, can be a criminal offense. Sucks as an introvert, as I've never really had a friend but more acquaintances. And that's what most of these business networking things, that's all it can ever really come to in most cases, is just professional acquaintances. Because again, these people are not your friends. In many cases, they're your competition, and they will try to sabotage you. Just like people at work are never really your friends. Because any one of them could go and rat you out to HR about something, anything, even just make something up out of whole cloth, and then you'll find yourself without a job. Nobody at work is your friend. That's why I'm always really cautious about what I say in any sort of professional setting. And when you have that mentality of asking yourself, how could this possibly be used against me to leave me without a job? It will make you much more guarded about what you actually do say and do. Unfortunately, it can also make you a bit paranoid and neurotic. I work graveyards, so I don't have to worry. Haha. You know what? In a sense, I envy you. The hours suck. But that just means less people there to bother you. Less people to get in the way of you actually getting work done. I used to love that about the graveyard shifts. Is that most of upper management has gone home for the day. It's quiet. You're basically just keeping the seat warm and making sure things don't burn down overnight. And in many ways, you can just sort of chill. I get so much reading and binge watching done that way too. Which, yes, chat, you are still working even if you've got that stuff going on. Most jobs are not so intense that you can't bring a book to read during your downtime or something like that. Nighttime is when my job kicks off. Yeah, depends on the job. Yeah, I got YouTube playing in the background while I do cleaning and stocking. Yeah. YouTube, a podcast. Maybe a favorite Twitch streamer.
Presence. Following afterwards, the protesters made their presence known by making noise via
I kind of want the Hellion.
vuvuzelas. The president of the National Assembly, Ana Brnabić, claimed that the protest was aimed at Aleksandar Vučić, and the government again tried to diminish the protesters by claiming there were only 25,000 people present. According to the government, the state utilized a custom-made software for counting people at protests, and that's how they got that number. Later on, they backtracked on the statement that there were only 25,000 people counted, but 18,000 instead. As of writing this video, the students and the government are in a standstill.
So this has been going on for a while, actually. So again, this video is from 3 weeks ago. So this has been going on for a while, and like I guess it's kind of increasing today.
Though some concessions were made by the government, the majority of the demands are still unfulfilled, mostly those relating to bringing the ones involved in the train station project and those attacking students to justice. The biggest event that transpired since the Slavia protest was the resignation of the Prime Minister Miloš Vučević, after several protesters were attacked, yet again, by SNS functionaries during a protest in front of an SNS venue, which ended up in one woman being taken to the hospital. However, the status quo of the country being at a standstill due to the blockades remains, and more smaller universities located in smaller cities and towns join their peers. In addition to this, it is theorized that the Serbian Ministry of Security Information has been trying to target students by creating websites where the student protesters would be doxxed via their full names, faces, and addresses being showcased. And
like I said, chat, no limit to what they won't do. This was a cool first stream. Got a rest for my shift tonight. Take care. Take care, Juanino. Again, thank you so much. Literally impossible for me to do that. I work in the alcohol industry. Yes, when it comes to the booze, nighttime is the right time.
And spyware infecting protesters as devices. In one instance, two dual national citizens of both Serbia and Croatia had their Croatian passports published in the government-owned.
Do you guys see it? Little emoji here. There's one right here.
You can't unsee it now, chat.
This one too.
Press, which is a severe breaking of the law. And moreover, the media intensified their witch hunt over the two dual nationals by claiming how they were a part of the Ustaše Croatian Nazis, with the only evidence supporting this claim. At the blockade where they were active, the students utilized a Croatian cookbook. Furthermore, the media propagated the insane theory how the cookbook was supplied to them via the Ustaše secret services with instructions. However, the students have refused to budge and refused to be intimidated until all their demands are met, with many spinning the situation to humor by creating creative and hilarious signs to scrutinize the government.
Dude, this one right here. Oh my god. These are week.
Furthermore, although
Yu-Gi-Oh
President Vučić
cards.
and his
Love
party,
it.
SNS, have created more or less a one-party state and
Yeah,
have
the
established
Vegeta too,
a strong
yeah.
voter base amongst the middle-aged and senior population, their support has started to corrode as many of them have kids and grandkids who are involved in the protests and have been targeted directly and indirectly by the government. Many farmers and lawyers have also joined the protests, with many of them now coming with tractors to major protests which they utilize as shields against the police and cars that would attempt to run over the protesters, which as a whole has severely damaged the trust in the current ruling party, making the older population, which has been the party's loyal voting base, re-examine their stance towards the government. As of most recent events transpiring, 2 major 24-hour protests occurred on the Belgrade highway near the city, and 3 on the bridges in Novi Sad, which were blockaded
Man.
symbolically for 3 hours for the 3 months
The
that
Egyptian
the
god
protests have been
cards
going
are
on,
Serbian.
while another
Exodia is Serbian. That.
Thanks for the Vichego.
publicly for 3 hours for the 3 months that the protests have been going on, while another protest occurred on the Novi Sad Freedom Bridge, which was blockaded for 27 hours, which allegedly has been the largest protest, overshadowing the Slavia one with over 300,000 attendees.
That's
right
a
now,
lot
it
of
is
people.
unknown what the result of this revolution will be, as
For a
the student
smaller
body
country
was
like Serbia,
dislodged,
yeah,
and due to
that's
the mass scale of
into
the people
1,000,
involved,
that's the
the
size of a
government
town.
cannot utilize direct force to disband the protests. Doing so would be political suicide and potentially open Pandora's box for a revolution Serbia hasn't seen since the fall of Milosevic. As such, they must tread carefully, as one wrong move can be the end of Vučić and SNS as we know it. Hopefully, the students will be able to get all their demands met with their fight. Perhaps the Iron Curtain of corruption in this country can
I don't know. I kind of feel like them adding like the extra 20% bonus money for students is kind of it's a little. I don't know about that. How did I unlock it? I just like looked up a website for it, like to like copy and paste it and stuff. But yeah, it's that's a little weird to like have that
come to an end,
attached to
and
it.
Serbia can see brighter days for its citizens where no
But
man
I guess
is
they
above
have
the law.
I guess they have so many people that they can do that now. And it's like this is like kind of happening like right now. Another video from Belgrade showing a huge scale protest taking place against President Vučić tonight, and they're demanding the resignation of the Serbian president.
As usual, politicians
God, it's so
trying
loud.
to dodge responsibility.
I mean, at this point, the ruling government in Serbia, they're finished. You've got this many people showing up to protest you, and these have been your responses so far. No, you're done. You're done. Vucic's position is untenable. And I think we all know it at this point. I think we'll go ahead and stop it there. Give that a like. That's some good content from Leaflet and Living Ironically in Europe. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon so you never miss an update. If you have any thoughts, questions, or ideas for future videos, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. You can also follow me on Twitter @LordRexworth for more updates and behind-the-scenes content. And if you want to support the channel, check out my Coffee or Throne pages. Links are in the description. Finally, be sure to visit LordRexworth.com and follow me across all platforms. That's LordRexworth.com. Until next time, I wish you all the best, and God bless.